The voice that once thundered through the Judean wilderness now echoed softly in a cold, stone prison cell. John the Baptist, the fiery prophet, sat in chains because he had dared to confront King Herod about his unlawful marriage to Herodias, his brother's wife. This truth had made him powerful enemies, and Herodias in particular burned with a thirst for vengeance that would not be quenched. The opportunity for her revenge came during Herod's grand birthday celebration. The palace halls overflowed with wine and laughter. In the midst of the revelry, Herod's stepdaughter, Salome, performed a dance that so pleased the king that in a moment of drunken pride he swore an oath before all his guests. "Ask me for anything you wish, and I will give it to you, up to half my kingdom." The young girl, uncertain, consulted her mother. Herodias saw her chance. She whispered a terrible instruction, and Salome returned to the feast with a chilling demand. "I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter." A silence fell over the banquet. Herod was trapped. Though he feared John and was deeply distressed by the request, his pride before his guests was stronger than his conscience. With a heavy heart, he gave the fatal order. In the darkness of the prison, a faithful prophet met his end. The gruesome request was fulfilled, and the platter was presented, first to Salome, who delivered the trophy to her vengeful mother. Yet even in this moment of profound evil, faithfulness remained. John's disciples came quietly under the cover of night. They tenderly gathered his body, laid him to rest in a tomb, and then, with hearts weighed down by grief, they went to find Jesus and bring him the tragic news. The voice crying in the wilderness had been silenced, but the light he had kindled would only burn brighter in the one who was to come. The story of the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the heart of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar erected a towering statue of gold and commanded the entire kingdom to bow. But when the music played, 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, remained standing. Furious, the king gave them one final chance, but their faith was unshakable. "Our God can deliver us," they declared, "but even if he does not, we will never worship your golden idol." Enraged, the king ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter. The flames were so fierce they killed the soldiers who threw the 3 men in. But when the king looked inside, he gasped in awe. They were not alone. A 4th figure, with a divine appearance, walked with them in the fire. When they emerged, not a hair was singed, nor did they even smell of smoke. A humbled King Nebuchadnezzar praised the God of Israel, declaring, "No other God can save like this." Their courageous faith not only saved them but turned the heart of a king. It had been a long day of teaching, and as evening fell, Jesus led his disciples into a boat to cross the Sea of Galilee. Exhausted, he found a cushion in the stern and fell into a deep sleep. The waters were calm, the sky was clear, and the gentle rocking of the boat promised a peaceful journey. But out on the open water, the weather turned with terrifying speed. A furious squall descended upon them. The wind screamed, whipping the sea into a chaos of towering waves that crashed over the sides, filling the boat with cold, dark water. The seasoned fishermen among them fought desperately against the storm, their faces etched with a fear they'd never known. This was no ordinary storm. It felt like the end. In their terror, they rushed to the back of the boat where Jesus still slept. "Teacher," they cried, shaking him awake, their voices trembling. "Don't you care if we drown?" Jesus awoke. His eyes were calm, his presence steady amidst the chaos. He looked at their frightened faces, not with anger, but with a profound question. "Why are you so afraid? Where is your faith?" Then he stood. The wind tore at his clothes, the spray stung his face, but his voice cut through the roar of the storm with undeniable authority. He spoke not to the disciples, but to the storm itself. "Peace," he commanded. "Be still!" And in that very instant, the screaming wind fell silent. The raging waves collapsed into a gentle, glassy calm. The clouds parted, revealing a starlit sky reflected perfectly on the now placid sea. The sudden quiet was as shocking as the storm had been. The disciples stood frozen, soaked to the skin, their hearts still pounding. They looked at the perfectly calm sea, then at the man who had commanded it. Awe washed over them, greater than their fear had been. They whispered among themselves, their voices filled with wonder and a dawning realization. "Who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him." By the shores of the Sea of Galilee, a desperate father pushed through the crowd. Jairus, a respected synagogue leader, fell at Jesus' feet, his voice choked with terror. "My little daughter is dying," he pleaded. "Please come and lay your hands on her so she will live." Moved with compassion, Jesus immediately went with him. The crowd pressed in so tightly they moved as a single suffocating mass. Hidden within that crowd was a woman who had suffered for 12 long years. She had spent everything on doctors only to grow worse. Isolated and weary, she thought. If I can just touch the fringe of his robe, I will be made well. Summoning her last strength, she reached through the forest of bodies and brushed the threads of his garment. Instantly, warmth flooded her body. The pain vanished. After 12 years, she was whole. But Jesus stopped. "Who touched my garments?" he asked. His disciples were baffled, but Jesus knew power had flowed from him. Trembling, the woman came forward and confessed everything. Jesus' voice softened with tenderness. "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." But in that moment of triumph, messengers arrived with devastating news. "Your daughter is dead," they told Jairus. "Why trouble the teacher further?" Jesus turned to the heartbroken father. "Do not fear," he said steadily. "Only believe." At the house, they found professional wailers and chaos. "Why this commotion?" Jesus asked. "The child is not dead, but sleeping." The mourners laughed scornfully, but Jesus cleared the room and took only the parents and 3 disciples inside. He took the girl's lifeless hand and spoke 2 words that would echo through eternity. "Talitha cum." "Little girl, arise." Immediately, color returned to her cheeks. Her eyes fluttered open and she stood up and began to walk. The room filled with breathless wonder. Then Jesus, with practical care, turned to her parents and said, "Give her something to eat." In one journey, 2 miracles unfolded. A quiet healing born of desperate faith, and a public restoration born of belief against all hope, both whispering that even when all seems lost, faith can change everything. The story of the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the heart of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar erected a towering statue of gold and commanded the entire kingdom to bow. But when the music played, 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, remained standing. Furious, the king gave them one final chance, but their faith was unshakable. "Our God can deliver us," they declared, "but even if he does not, we will never worship your golden idol." Enraged, the king ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter. The flames were so fierce they killed the soldiers who threw the 3 men in. But when the king looked inside, he gasped in awe. They were not alone. A 4th figure, with a divine appearance, walked with them in the fire. When they emerged, not a hair was singed, nor did they even smell of smoke. A humbled King Nebuchadnezzar praised the God of Israel, declaring, "No other God can save like this." Their courageous faith not only saved them but turned the heart of a king. The house in Capernaum was so packed, no one could get through the door. But 4 determined friends carried their paralyzed companion to the roof. They dug through the clay tiles and lowered him right down in front of Jesus. Seeing their extraordinary faith, Jesus first offered words the man needed most. "Son, your sins are forgiven." Religious leaders nearby were shocked, thinking this was blasphemy. Knowing their thoughts, Jesus asked them a question: which is easier, to forgive sins or to make a paralyzed man walk? Then he turned to the man and said, "Get up, take your mat, and go home." Instantly, the man's legs grew strong. He stood, picked up his mat, and walked out through the crowd as everyone watched in amazed wonder. That day, Jesus showed he had power not just to heal bodies, but to forgive sins and transform lives. This is a story of Samson. He was the strongest man who ever lived, and his power was a secret, tied to a sacred vow and the 7 braids of hair upon his head. But his strength became his weakness when he fell in love with a woman named Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines saw their chance. They came to Delilah with an offer. "Find the secret of his strength," they said, "and we will give you a fortune in silver." And so the game of lies began. Delilah pleaded, "Tell me, Samson, what would make you weak?" He teased her. "Tie me with 7 new bowstrings," he said. She did, and he snapped them like thread. "Bind me with new ropes," he lied. She did, and he broke them with a shrug. "Weave my hair into a loom," he joked. She did, and he pulled the whole loom apart. But day after day, her pleas wore him down. "How can you say you love me?" she cried, "if you don't trust me with your heart?" Finally, worn out by her nagging, he told her the truth. "My hair has never been cut. It is the source of my strength. Shave my head, and I will become as weak as any other man." Seeing he had finally told the truth, Delilah sent for the Philistines. As Samson slept peacefully in her lap, a man crept in and shaved off the 7 braids of his hair. She cried, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke ready to fight, but for the first time his strength was gone. The Lord had left him. The Philistines seized him. They gouged out his eyes and threw him into a dark prison, where he was forced to grind grain like an animal. But in the darkness, his hair began to grow back. One day, the Philistines brought him to their temple to mock him. As they laughed, Samson felt for the 2 central pillars that held the entire building up. He prayed, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more." And with a final mighty push, he brought the entire temple down, defeating his enemies and fulfilling his destiny. A man had 2 sons. The younger son grew restless. "Father," he said one day, "give me my share of the estate." So the father divided his property, and the young man set off for a distant country, dreaming of freedom and adventure. There he lived wildly, spending everything he had on reckless living. But when his money was gone, a severe famine struck, and he found himself in desperate need. The only job he could get was feeding pigs, and he was so hungry he longed to eat the pods he fed them. Hitting rock bottom, he came to his senses. "Even my father's hired servants have food to spare," he thought. "I will go back and say, 'Father, I have sinned. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your servants.'" And so he began the long, shameful journey home. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. His heart swelled with compassion. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son began his rehearsed speech. "Father, I have sinned." But the father interrupted him, calling to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Kill the fattened calf. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Now, the older son had been working in the fields. As he approached the house, he heard the music and dancing. He asked a servant what was happening, and when he learned it was for his brother, he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and pleaded with him. But the older son replied, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you, yet you never even gave me a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who squandered your property comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." The father looked at him with loving eyes. "My son," he said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate